Welcome to the Saints Crown Show. This is a show for men who want to grow. In a world where confusion is the culture and passivity is the practice, we exist to take men from gaining massive clarity to taking massive action. Because we believe that if we can help bring order to your life, you can bring order to your world.
Welcome back to the Saints Crown Show. I'm your host, Zachary Reed, and I'm here with co-founder Preston Woody.
Hello.
And I'm so excited for this episode because we've been hinting at it, we've been talking about it, and now it's time to dive into it, and that is the 4 roles of a man.
The excitement around this, Zach, is explosive. And so that's often in our language about certain roles men have. And whenever I'm talking about it in everyday life or with a client or with someone casually speaking and they ask, what are the 4 roles of a man? I have to pause and say, do you really want to know? Do you really want to talk about this?
Yeah.
Because once we start, it's explosive. And once you get this frame of understanding, the way that you view masculinity can never be the same.
Yeah, I feel like every man that I've had the opportunity to either coach or lead through something, anytime I'm able to introduce them to the framework and then correlate the situation that they're walking through directly to a attribution or character trait of one of the roles, it's like, it's like a light bulb moment goes off.
Yes.
And they can have clarity around that.
Yes. And some will ask, like, is this new? How you come up with this? This is actually nothing new. It's actually an ancient framework, an ancient framework that has been abdicated and lost. And so the idea behind the 4 roles of a man is we have everyone asking today, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? Okay. And when men ask, okay, if you don't know who you are, then you don't know why you exist. If you don't know why you exist, you're not going to know what to do or how to live properly. And you're going to end up in this life filled with meaninglessness and confusion and just sampling and trying things, trying to see what sticks. This provides a framework, but the better question to ask is not who am I, but what is my role? What is my role in my existence? Because the answer of who am I is you are a man. Yeah. The answer, what does it mean to be a man? Well, what it means to be a man is to take on the responsibility of the 4, I believe, divinely, providentally given roles of who a man is and who a man is supposed to be.
Oh, I'm excited. Let's dive into it.
Well, excellent. So in context of masculinity, a man has 4 roles, okay? 4 roles that are roles of health. And when a man is operating in these roles, his life prospers and flourishes, and there's meaning in his life and those around his life. But if you're not operating in those roles, there are shadow roles that you will begin to operate in as default. So let's jump in.
Yeah.
The first role is the role of the king. Now, what is the role of the king? The king's core desire is 2 things. It's both a need of chaos and order. Okay, the role of the king is to bring order where there is chaos. Yeah. What's the idea of bringing order? The king is like bringing the pot to the plant so that the plant can flourish and create something beautiful. That's the idea behind order. So the king has to have a sense of order on the inside before he can bring order to his external world. Oftentimes men try to bring order in their external world without having order internally. What they end up bringing is tyranny and control. Right? So you have to be able to lead from and bring from what's already in motion on the inside. Now that's the role of the kings. The king, his divine gift is to be able to provide. And that's what the king does. He provides, whether it's provides structure, knowledge, understanding, a safe place, sustenance. That's what the king does. And a man, if a man doesn't feel like they are providing, they're going to naturally feel less of a man. So when you cut a man down and take away his ability to provide, he is going to feel out of alignment because it's his divine responsibility. So when you're a king, I talked about chaos, and this idea of chaos and order is, yes, the king brings order, but the king also needs chaos. Yeah. What does that mean? Like, what do you mean a king needs chaos? It's like, just because there's chaos in your life doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It means you're supposed to be there to bring order to it. Yes. So if you're in a place where everything is organized and set up and perfect on the bookshelf, then you're in this environment of extreme order where you're going to begin to feel this sense of meaninglessness.
Yeah.
And lethargy. You're going to feel out of alignment with your mission. Why? Because you aren't facing the chaos and expanding your borders. And that's the responsibility of the king. I remember in 2020, I felt like the Lord speak to me, my Creator speak to me. I was asking, it was in shifting of careers and direction. God, what do you want for me? And I spent 40 hours in the wilderness, no phone, no food, nothing, just to get crystal clear in this time of sobriety. And I felt my Creator say to me, bring order to your soul, then bring order to your house, and then you can go bring order to the world. There's a progression of things. And oftentimes we see in our culture leaders trying to bring order that are living from a place of chaos.
Like a leader trying to bring order externally before they've done it internally. So you see this, I feel like you see this a lot, even in church ministry, where you have like a pastoral family that is seen as having so much order externally towards the leadership that they're putting out, but then internally the family unit is like a disaster.
I think so. And I think a prime example is an individual by the name of Karl Marx, the originator of Marxism, socialism, communism, where that birthplace of it, where he articulated a new world order when his life was in shambles.
Yeah.
He was dependent financially on his father. He couldn't support his family. His values were out of alignment. His kids didn't respect him and wanted to completely go against his philosophy. His marriage fell apart. And so this was a man that was living a life of chaos, trying to conceive and fix the world with a new order.
Yeah.
When he had no order in his life himself.
So good.
So what happens if you're not operating as the king? You're going to default into what we call shadow types. You're either going to operate in the passive shadow type, which is the puppet.
Yeah.
The puppet is one who is being controlled by someone else. You're going to be passive. If you ever seen the movie Braveheart, there's King Longshanks, who on the other end wouldn't be the puppet, he would be the tyrant. And we see the puppet prince, right, who is going along with his father's whim, and he just wants to please everybody. Yeah. But yet we have the tyrant on the other side who is trying to control the lineage and the offspring of the Scots, and to impose his dominion and rule. And we have, I think, the best picture of the king would be William Wallace, who, at the beginning of the story, with his uncle, goes to Rome to learn and structure and order his life, and then returns back to Scotland to help bring order for the Scots and overthrow tyranny. So we have a lot of men that are operating as a puppet, which is being controlled by someone else.
Yes.
And that's what you're doing is you're pacifying, or a tyrant if you're controlling the outcomes.
I'm even thinking about, this is so good. I'm even thinking about how you could be imbalanced in different aspects of your life. So like you could be in more of a passive role of a puppet in your marriage, for instance, and then be a controlling tyrant leader because there's a lack of balance in your relationship. And so now there's like an offset of that in your leadership. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Where it's like it's almost like it can affect different areas without you being just a tyrant or just a puppet in all areas.
I think to your point, if you take the historical count of King Ahab of Israel and Jezebel, that was exactly that. We had Ahab as externally a conquering warlord, but internally he was the puppet of his controlling wife, Jezebel.
That's good.
So it can express itself in different ways.
Yeah.
But was there any flourishing under his reign? No. There was famine, pestilence, and intense sorrow. Nothing could grow and flourish. That's even symbolic of what Elijah prophesied, is that there will be no rain, because he was a puppet tyrant.
Yeah. What are some of the characteristics of a king?
I think we can identify a king by his depth of presence, his capacity to be present in the moment. We have a culture that is so distracted, right? That the value of presence has been minimized. The capacity to sit in a moment, eyeball to eyeball, and to be fully in the moment, physically, psychologically, mind, heart, and spirit. To be able to sit with your children and not be thinking about the next thing that you're doing or what you have to do or the text that are coming through, but to be in that moment, look your baby in the eyes, and to smile and to play and to be there. I remember one of the most riveting moments of my life was when my baby was born, Olivia, when she was just 6 weeks. I remember holding her on the couch and I pulled out my phone to answer a few messages, and I was looking through my phone and I felt a little hand on my hand that was holding the phone began to move to the left, and then I looked at Olivia and then I just didn't quite faze me. Pulled my phone back out. Was going to finish my message right then. Again, she began to push my hand because at wild. 6 weeks old, she understood and realized and comprehended that her father was there, but wasn't really there, right? So there wasn't a consistency. Your depth of presence, I think, is your greatest gift as a king, because it's a mirror to the outside of order on the inside. You can't fully be present in a moment when you're in this internal chaos and confusion and indecision.
Yes.
And that's the gift of the king.
And ultimately, I feel like that fuels the characteristic of being a father. Because you can have a father and still have an absent father.
Yes.
Because of the distractions. So
yes.
It's so good.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And that really is the symbol of the king, is the symbolic of the father.
I love it. What if we had to give a symbol to symbolize the role of a king, what would that be, and what does it represent?
I think I see the king as the lion, in context of the lion is still. The lion isn't rushing. Like you ever seen a bird walk around, right? And how it's just fleeting in zigzag directions, almost like it's confused as to where it's going. That's how most people live and operate, from thing to thing. But a lion is stoic, is calm, is very intentional with his gaze in the direction that he's looking. He's not expending energy on things that are going to make him weaker. But yet, just because he's still doesn't mean he's not powerful. And I think that would be the best example. And that, I think we should jump into the warrior now.
Let's do it.
So role number 2 would be the role of the warrior. The warrior. And what does the warrior need? Like the king needs chaos and order, right? And his gift is to bring order. The warrior needs both resistance and breakthrough. Resistance and breakthrough. So if a man doesn't have something of resistance, they're going to feel a sense of meaninglessness. Resistance is not bad. Resistance is good, which is to say a man needs a mission to be on. If you don't have a mission, you're going to manufacture one in Call of Duty or sports. You're going to manufacture resistance in the line at a football game. Like, just think about the man's desire for resistance and breakthrough. Like that moment, that crescendo in football when when someone with the ball breaks through the line,
Yeah.
and the entire the crowd begins to roar. It's that feeling of breakthrough, right? A man needs that feeling of resistance and breakthrough. And if you don't find it in a healthy way, you're going to manufacture it in an unhealthy way.
What does that look like?
Oftentimes in most men, because they're not facing the responsibility of resistance externally, they're going to manufacture it internally. And a lot of times it looks like pornography. It's a manufacturing of getting this resistance and getting that release of breakthrough and finding something internal, or with video games. And the idea behind it is, if you're not engaging in it, you're going to manufacture it. And even in more assertive personalities, like the warrior, that one of the shadow types is the mercenary, is if you aren't in a healthy conflict externally, you're going to manufacture conflict. You are going to create problems where you are because you aren't facing the problems that you should be facing. So there's the mercenary, who is on the controlling side. So if you're not operating in the war, you're going to shift into either the controlling side as the mercenary, and that's how you have someone that's maybe more on the side of chauvinistic and domineering, or the rogue, who is much more passive, conflict avoidant, and their kind of desires to self-preserve wherever they can.
I'm thinking about what you were saying with video games, and I'm thinking about how even in the context of a video game, it's this constant, these resistant related scenarios that you're constantly having to fight through, and ultimately either constant killing or taking down or things like that. And it's interesting to me that how that could almost even birth inside of you a controlling mercenary approach to life, where now you're seeing fits of anger and outrage, and because all you're training yourself to do through the process of playing these video games where you're killing and attacking and going is like, that's how you're approaching 99% of your situations, because that's what you're pre-programming your brain to receive those as.
I certainly see that.
Yeah.
Of programming yourself in that way.
Yeah.
And the reason we go into it is it's a abdication of real responsibility.
Yeah.
And so how do you know? You identify the king by his depth of presence, but what we identify the warrior for his capacity for conflict. I think a lot of men today have a low capacity for healthy conflict.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? To go in and face and engage in conflict? Our pastor talks about the difference between a peacekeeper and a peacemaker, right? So what is that? What is that difference? The peacekeeper settles for artificial harmony. The peacemaker is willing to engage in healthy conflict.
Yes.
For the sake of true peace. And I think that's the responsibility for the warrior, is you want peace.
Yeah.
You want it.
Well, and it seems like too, I think you could toss back and forth between these two shadow types easily, because we're wanting to avoid conflict. And then because we're not working through healthy levels of conflict when times are good, when bad times happen, then it causes you to get into a controlling thought process on the opposite end of that. So because we're avoiding conflict, when conflict is absolutely necessary, it can almost cause you to completely go off the loose end, because you're not used to that healthy level of engaging in conflict. So working on things when times are easy, so that when times are hard, you've been working on it, so you have a firm foundation.
Yes. I've heard it said, better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war.
Yeah.
Is war isn't the purpose, but to have the capacity for it. Excellently articulated. Next role is the role of the poet.
Yeah.
The poet. Talk to me about your ideas of the role of the poet.
So what I've learned, having embraced this role recently, is that this is the role where you are cultivating beauty, where you are intentionally loving, where you are creating meaning to things. So you're bringing meaning to everyday situations. So something I'm thinking about is when we did our very first wilderness experience, you were so good at every challenge and obstacle and everything that we were doing. You were always asking us, what does this mean? What does this represent? And I had never thought about doing that just in normal life. Like, okay, this situation happened. What does this mean? Like, what is the meaning that I'm assigning to it? Because I think if you don't assign a meaning to it, then it's really easy to slip into a mindset of really playing that victim card, or like, oh, all this stuff is happening to me. Or being like, no, like, what does this mean? What am I supposed to get from this? And how can I cultivate this environment, even if the circumstances don't necessarily reflect that? And so something I've learned too is that like the gift of the poet is to play. And to have fun and like celebrate and focus on like the wins of that. And so I'm a little bit more of a serious person. And so this has been one I've really had to lean into of like, okay, in the last episode I shared my story. So a lot of the things that I've walked through, I now like something I've been kind of chewing on recently is I have to replace what I used to find as fun with new levels of fun, because that's the desire inside of the poet is to have fun.
Right.
And if your fun used to be in sin and drinking and, all of these things, then you have to find new forms of fun. Because you have to find meaning in the things that you're walking through. So that's what it means to me.
And it's liberating to know that to be masculine is to have the capacity to play. Not to be extremely stoic and walled off, but to be able to assign meaning to something. So we climbed up this mountain and we asked the question, what did this mean? And as we, what did this mean? And after we just go through this challenging experience, and some of the guys began to tear up when they began to articulate what the mountain represented. He said, before I articulated this, my legs just hurt. But now I conquered something in my life. Same thing with like lifting weights or working out, is you're either just hurting your body or you're getting stronger. Like that is the gift of the poet, that to take noise and turn it into music. Right. Like to take words, turn it into poetry. And that's what really brings, I think, meaning to life. And the capacity to play.
Can you break down, even just as your role as a father, what introducing play into like even your dynamics with your kids, just what does that look like from a father's perspective?
I'm a believer that play in within the family structure is the responsibility of the father. And so a lot of women will think, I'm good at nurturing, but I'm not good at playing. Like, well, it's good that you play, but that's not necessarily your responsibility. Like the responsibility of the father is to teach the kids what it means to enjoy life and to play. And so what it looks like is, I'm coming home at the end of the day. I'm not coming home to let down. I'm coming home to play. Like it's playtime. Like we're throwing off the bags. I'm throwing the kids on the couch and we're going to town. Like I'm either dancing with Olivia or sword fighting with Elijah. It's dad's attention and focus and energy, and I want them to know that I'm there. I remember growing up, my dad gave me that gift. He worked a lot, and I admired him for the capacity in which he worked, but I never felt like he was absent because of the way he played with us. I remember hearing the garage door open and being so excited because I knew Dad was going to come find us. And he was going to come throw my brother and I around the room in the most loving possible way. And we were so excited. There's something that that you're a responsibility to impart play to those in and around and about you. And it's in those moments where life is tense.
Yeah.
It's the capacity to crack a joke and to lighten everything
and have
up.
fun.
And to have fun.
And enjoy the view on the way up.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I feel you on that, because I think kind of being more of a intellectual in my mind, kind of sometimes quiet, more reserved. Mm-hmm. It's challenging to not challenging. It's something I'm leaning into, where it's like, hey, let's pause. Let's celebrate like where we're at. Yes. Like we just accomplished this thing. Like let's have some fun for a second. It's important. Like you have to be able to celebrate the things on the way up. Otherwise you're going to miss it. Yes. And you just get to the top and you're like, oh man, what did we just do?
Well, that's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's life. That's where we get meaning from. Cause we can have success, but without significance and meaning. I mean, I would almost say that success without significance is ultimate failure.
Yeah.
Because we see so many people who reach the top.
Yeah.
And we find them hanging from a noose.
Yeah.
Or overdosed because they achieved all the success, but they were empty of significance.
Yes. That's good.
So that's a responsibility of a man, I think, to bring meaning where there is suffering.
Let's talk about the shadow types. I don't think we highlighted the shadow types on this one.
Well, these are interesting. Yeah. There's the controlling shadow type of, if you're not operating as the poet, then you'll be operating as the controlling, which is the playboy. Now that is the controlling aspect, which is manipulation and to take. On the other end, you have the addict, which is avoidance of all suffering. Like instead of bringing meaning to suffering, you're going to avoid suffering, and you're just trying to escape. So we have the addict as one who might be engaging in substance abuse, numbing, and the playboy who may be going out and causing that to other people. Yeah. So we have like the womanizer on the playboy side and the porn addict, on the other side, and whatever substance that we choose to insert there. But that's all because of a abdication of the responsibility of the poet of bringing meaning where there is suffering.
Yes. Okay. All right, the last role. This one's my favorite because this is my primary masculine edge that I've come to learn and understand, and that is the role of the priest.
Role of the priest. Yeah. A beautiful role. And one of the most overlooked, I think. As men, we have a responsibility to take on the role of the priest. And what is the priest responsible to do? The priest is responsible to bring understanding where there is mystery. The world is filled with confusion. And it's the responsibility of the priest to dive in and to carve out and articulate what the truth actually is. From the priest, you can hear the truth, because the priest, even in the ancient world, was the one who would go and face God and come and share what God said to the people, the revealer of the mysteries of heaven, to bring that sort of understanding, to bring truth. And it's the responsibility of the man to bring that spiritual alignment to their family, to their household, and to the environments that they walk in, I think.
Yeah. And the shadow types of the priest is you have the wanderer.
Yes.
And then you have the showman. So with this one, with the primary focus being mystery and understanding, the showman will take the knowledge and the wisdom and all of the thought processes of the world. And now it's the Zach show, the look at me. I'm going to teach you all of these things that I know. And almost making that the God that you're seeking, versus the balance of it would be to be a priest first to the Lord. First, before you do anything. And then the wanderer, it's interesting because obviously in our society and culture, New Age and witchcraft and all this kind of stuff is like at an all-time high. And it's interesting when you look at it from this perspective, like this lens, because there is a desire inside of us for mystery and understanding. And so if you're not seeking after the Lord, then you'll naturally wander into a direction of witchcraft, which is counterfeit power. It's counterfeit love. It's counterfeit knowledge and understanding. And I think it's interesting that even the first sin recorded in the Bible was when Adam and Eve ate the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. So it's this understanding that there's something greater than the relationship with God. It's this other piece of information or wisdom that you need. When really all we need is our relationship with the Lord.
Yes. You couldn't have articulated that better. I think between the wanderer and the showman, the priest needs mystery and understanding, but the showman wants you to know that he understands.
Yes.
And you can often tell a showman by someone who's saying, I know. You tell them things, I know. They're like the I know people.
Yeah.
You know any I know people? Yeah. You're like, you don't want to tell them anything.
I was that person for a minute.
because their favorite phrase is, I know. Like, they're puffed up. Yet on the wanderer side is they're obsessed with mystery. So they never get to the understanding point because things become so relative, like you talked about.
Yeah.
They dive into the mystery and feeling like understanding more will get them to a place of confidence and competence. When they're unwilling to settle for truth. So that's why the role of the priest is so important. A priest needs a creator to seek. And the priest is also known by his quality of wisdom, not his projection of knowledge like the showman, but the quality and the depth of his wisdom. And that's the person that people tend to come to with questions.
Yes. Yeah, because I think the heart posture of it is, I don't know all of the answers, but I know the one who does have the answers. And having that teachable and humble heart of not being a showman like you think you know it all, but actually we're going to go seek the Lord on whatever it may be, and we're going to get his heart and his perspective and his wisdom on it, because he's the creator of all things anyway. And I think a lot of people, it's easy to operate from your own place of knowledge or like your own wisdom rather than going to the ultimate creator first and just starting there.
Yeah, well, it's our default.
Yeah.
And I think that the roles must be chosen, because I don't think that we're going to fall into them. We have to choose them.
Yeah.
We have to choose to operate in them.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll fall into the default. And all of the roles that we talked about, it's not. Someone might ask, "Well, I'm just a king." It's like, no. In order to be balanced and full as a man in your core, you have to take ownership and take on every single role. And what does it mean to be the king? Ultimately, that's a symbol of the role of the father. We talked about is every man has a responsibility to a degree to be a father, whether or not you have children. It's bringing people up and leading them. The role of the warrior is synonymous with being a brother. As fighting people that you're willing to fight for. For and with, yes. And the role of the poet is synonymous of the role of the lover. Is you have to have something in someone to love in order to be balanced. And then finally, the role of the priest is that role of the son. In order to be a good father, lover, brother, you must first be a good son and have that connection with your creator and the understanding and confidence of that and the willingness to constantly and continuously go back to your father. To seek out the mysteries so that you can bring understanding to your world.
So I feel like some people may naturally be thinking, like, this is great. I can identify with a lot of these. I think I love that you brought clarity to the point that every man encompasses all four roles of all four of the roles. But how can someone understand their edge, like their masculine edge, like the primary roles that they operate in, and like how would someone go about learning more about implementing this into their life?
In the groups that we work together on is is we began to come up with simple application of identify, like such as, and you can even do this now, identify the role that you're doing well in and a role that you're not doing well in, and what can you practically do to develop yourself, or just get crystal clear and rate yourself, 1 to 10, how well you're doing and what you need to do different. And so we began to apply this and got great results time after time of going through this process with groups of men. And then finally, this was actually what you brought up as I taught it, and for I think the final session that we were going through together, and you said, what would it look like to turn this into an assessment where someone can go through and ask a bunch of questions, check a bunch of answers to the questions, and figure out where am I, and get a custom-based result on who you are and what that actually looks like.
And what does that do when you receive that information? What does that do for you?
I think what it's already done for me, because we put this together and we brought a group of men through this process, is what it does is it brings a sense of alignment, a framework of where to build. What this is it's a framework more than anything. And it's the ancient framework of what it means to be a man. Yes. So now you don't need to build thinking that you have the wrong blueprint. You can build being confident that this is the right blueprint, and what I build here is going to have integrity.
Yeah, I think for me, it has allowed me to see how in the different roles of life, whether it be who I am as a roommate at home or as a brother to family, or friends, like it's given me a grid and a language and a framework, like you said, to understand when, where, and how to operate in these specific roles.
Yes.
And so it's brought a lot of, I think, just clarity to how to operate more effectively as a man in life.
And that's interesting, is identifying also what role you have an edge in. Yeah. And not that the rest of the roles we're throwing those away, but knowing, you know what, I have a great edge in the poet, and I can do this better than most people in this context. And this is what I can bring to the table. Yeah. And I think there's power in that. And also choosing and building your relationships out of men who have strengths in other roles that you may not necessarily have.
Yes, that's powerful. And like, I know for me, when I realized, my primary role as a man that I bring into meetings and conversations and everything is the role of the priest. Yes. And so it's been life-changing to then stop and look back at life and see all of these moments where it's like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing, and I didn't even realize that was what I was bringing to that conversation or situation.
Yes. It provides language to do what you were born to do.
Yeah. That's so good. So what would you say is what can someone do right now to implement, learn, understand more about this? Like, what is the main takeaway for men who are listening to this? What's the next step for them?
I would do two things. For right now, first thing you would do is identify, okay, what role resonated the most with you? Like that is really me and how I operate at my best. And learn everything that you can about it. And then secondly, what is the shadow role that you lean into?
Yes.
And the reason we call them shadow roles is they have power because the lights are off. When you turn the lights on, the shadow begins to get weaker. Yeah. And you can turn the lights on and realize, hey, I do operate as a addict or a tyrant in this context. And even when the next time that you do, you flare up and get all controlling with your wife, and you reflect after that, wow, I was just operating in my shadow role, right? And understand the reason why you did that. Then you have context for why you do what you do. Then you can make adjustments and changes. And then the best thing I think that you can do is to take this masculine role assessment so that you can gain massive clarity on who you are as a man, so that you can bring order to your internal life, so then you can then go bring order to your world.
Beautiful. I love it.
Well, I think we did the right thing.
I do too. I feel like we have a better understanding of that. And I think the assessment is an amazing tool where literally in like less than 5 minutes, you can get a better understanding and clarity on those things. And so I'm excited to see, just like we did in our men's group and the wilderness experience, the transformation that occurs when you have more understanding and clarity of what's happening around you. And I'm excited to see even just the people who are listening to this or watching this, the transformation that they're going to experience when they're reviewing the assessment results. It's going to be great.
That it will. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for watching. Tune in next time. See you. See you then. Thank you for investing in yourself with us. And if you feel like, hey, I found my tribe right now, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Also, you can go ahead and take your masculine role assessment, or you can just find us on social media at Instagram at saints.crown. I hope to see you soon.